A concerned family made not one but two phone calls for a welfare check on their beloved daughter and sister, Maleesa Mooney. On the second attempt, the police made a gruesome discovery. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are starting this year off great and reaching all your resolutions or moving towards them. I know the year just started, and I am doing everything in my power to do that. I just wanted to say hello and welcome back before we jump back into this case. So let's get into it. On Sunday, September 10th, 2023, the LAPD began conducting a welfare check on the apartment of Maleesa Mooney. This came from a phone call from her sister who was not able to reach her for the past couple of days. And for those of you who have siblings that keep in close contact, you'll understand how alarming it can be and out of the ordinary it is when you speak to someone on a regular basis and something happens and you don't get in contact with them. So the family had been trying to text Maleesa throughout the past few days, but their texts were going green. For those of you who don't have iPhones, that means that the text didn't deliver properly or didn't deliver at all. Typically, when you're messaging on an iPhone, the messages are blue. While the police were at the apartment, they knocked on the door and surveyed the scene, and they didn't see any disturbances. So they left without actually contacting the person who lived at the house, who they had the welfare check ordered for, which I think is out of the norm. I know I've definitely called for a welfare check before, and they weren't able to leave the premises until they spoke to the person that they needed to speak to. So I don't know what the story is on that first attempt, but they said since there was no foul play, they were able to leave. So on Tuesday, the 12th, just a few days later, Maleesa's mother still wasn't able to contact her. So she called the apartment building, which was the Sky at Bunker Hill, to request another welfare check. And for some reason, at this time now, on the 12th, the texts that were previously turning green were now going through as delivered for whatever reason. So they were blue. So they were showing up as blue on her phone. So the police went to the apartment complex and spoke to the manager, and the manager gave them a key, or the manager walked up with the police to open the door using the fob that they have to get into everyone's apartment. And when the police came in, they surveyed the scene again inside, and they didn't see anything out of the ordinary until they walked closer into the into the kitchen, and they noticed that the perishable items that are usually in the fridge, for some reason, was not in the fridge. They were just on the counter. So that being a bit out of the ordinary, they made sure to go in to look in the fridge and see what was going on in there. And when they opened the refrigerator, they found Maleesa Mooney's body wedged inside. 31-year-old Maleesa Mooney was a Guyana native who grew up in the South Los Angeles Hyde Park area after moving here from Guyana at age 13 with her family. So when I was doing some research into this case, I attempted to look on her Instagram page, but it was made private before she was killed. So I wasn't able to see anything on her end. But at the time that I saw, she had about 60,000 followers on her Instagram page. She was also a published model and a luxury real estate agent. Not much is known about Maleesa since this is a new case, but her family described her as the peacemaker and that she was so sweet and kind. What additional information and photographs and things that I found were from her sisters, Jordan Pauline, her Instagram and TikTok pages. She would occasionally post her from time to time. Jordan revealed that in August, Maleesa had shared with their mother that she had missed her period and believed that she was pregnant. And that was later confirmed by her, I don't know if it's her boyfriend, but her baby's father, that shared with Jordan as well that she was pregnant and that they had an appointment coming up where they could weigh their options. But Jordan believed that Maleesa would want to keep the child. I'll touch back on this portion a little bit later since there is some discrepancies with this account, but that'll be towards the end of the video. So Jordan said that shortly before her family lost contact with Maleesa, that a group of friends were over at her house. I think that was on that was on September 5th. However, the friends left the apartment, I think that day or the next, yeah, that same day, and she stayed behind. And it was a male and a female that was in the apartment alongside Maleesa. On September 6th, the very next day, Maleesa was last seen in the elevator of her apartment building on CCTV footage, and this was confirmed as the last footage of her. So there were no signs of forced entry into her apartment, and the police haven't said if they think the suspect was someone that she knew or a complete stranger. To me, the attack feels kind of personal, and you'll know why when I get into the portion towards the end. So currently, there is no suspect identified, and the police haven't named any persons of interest. And that's as of January 15th, which is today when I'm filming. On Thursday, September 7th, which is the last day that Maleesa was seen, there was a young man that was seen using her key fob to get into the elevator, and this same man was carrying plastic bags up into her apartment. So Maleesa was supposed to go back to her old apartment to gather some belongings, since she had just previously moved into this apartment in August, which is a month prior. So she was still in the process of moving. So on the 9th, she was supposed to go grab her stuff, but she never made it to that. She never made it to go over and get her items. So that's when her sister called the police to inform them. So her autopsy report was released, and I have read it in its entirety several times. I'll give a quick summary, and then I will go through some of the alarming things that I think should be shared and should be noted. And as a disclaimer, this case is very descriptive, and I don't want to say gruesome. It is gruesome. Any death, really, or murder is gruesome, but it's very descriptive, and I will be reading directly from the report in certain parts. So if you're not wanting to listen to that, then I suggest you go to this portion on the screen just to move forward, and you can skip what I have to say. So there was a rape kit that was found, even though she still had she had no defensive marks and no, I believe, sexual assault visible to her body, allegedly. She still had her clothes still on, but that is what was noted in the report. Now, going into it a bit more, let me grab my laptop so I can give you a play-by-play. So according to the report, Maleesa was found with blunt force trauma from head to toe. Some of the injuries included a cut to her forehead, a blackened right eye that extended into her cheek. It was about 3 by 3 inches long and wide, a busted lip, subcutaneous hemorrhage, which just means bleeding underneath the skin. Internally, she had 2 subcutaneous hemorrhages on her frontal scalp, blunt force trauma to her torso. She also had multiple contusions and abrasions across her back. She had redness on the front of her hips, kind of in the V-line on the pelvis. She had a left rib fracture. She also had cuts and contusions across her arms and legs. When we get to the genital portion of the exam, there was no mention of a baby, which conflicts with the account that her family gave. Her body was found in the fridge with a pool of blood underneath it. Her wrists were tied to her ankles behind her back with electrical cords and clothing. She had additional clothing around her face and neck, and there was a gag made of clothing placed into her mouth. So they were unable to identify if she was bound before or after death. Her toxicology report noted that she had traces of benzoylecgonine, cocaethylene, and ethanol. So benzoylecgonine is what occurs after your body metabolizes cocaine. So it's those traces that remain in longer than the cocaine itself. The retention time is just longer in the body. Cocaethylene is the byproduct of consuming cocaine and alcohol or ethanol. So this is what happens when your liver metabolizes those two substances. And lastly, her blood alcohol level was 0.063, which is below the legal drinking limit, which is 0.08. I also wanted to quote what the medical examiner said in the report. I thought it was really important. The blunt force traumatic injuries observed at autopsy are generally not considered acutely life-threatening on their own. However, based on the circumstances of how Miss Mooney was found, these injuries suggest that she was likely involved in a violent altercation prior to her death. Given this, the role that drugs and or alcohol may have played in Miss Mooney's death, if any, is uncertain. Based on the history, circumstances, and autopsy findings as currently known, Miss Mooney's death was likely the result of, or at least related to, the actions of another individual. In particular, there is suspicion for homicidal asphyxia in this case. Characteristic anatomic findings of strangulation were not appreciated at autopsy, but the lack of these findings cannot exclude homicidal asphyxia by other mechanisms. Without findings to elucidate a clearer mechanism of death or knowledge of the sequence of events leading to Miss Mooney's death, the cause of death is deemed homicidal violence. The manner of death is homicide. So what I found interesting in that is that the medical examiner stated that since even though there was no evidence of strangulation, they do think that her cause of death had something to do with asphyxia, which is just choking or strangling. Even though it wasn't present on her body, they could have had another way that they stopped circulation to her breathing. So I just wanted to put that out there since the technical cause of death is just homicidal violence, and we can see that she was obviously put through a lot, but we don't have the exact pinpoint on what actually killed her. So Maleesa was found fully dressed in a leopard print romper and a pair of underwear, and in that underwear was a pad that had blood on it, meaning that she was on her period at the time of death, which also furthers my thought into why I believe that she wasn't pregnant at the time, and she knew of it. Once across her neck was a gold piece of clothing, a gray dress, and 3 rags. A yellow bikini top was wrapped around her ankles. Part of her vest was stuffed inside her mouth. Around her wrist and ankles were white phone charging cords and white shoelaces, and a black tank top. Both of her eyes were swollen shut. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some theories. While looking into the apartment complex, I was on Google reviews and I saw that a maintenance man was brought up a few times in a less than positive light, and it kind of reminded me of the Maya Marcano case. She was a young woman who was unfortunately stalked and murdered by a maintenance man. One of the maintenance guy came out to do a work order and he smelled like alcohol and was very flirty and unprofessional while on the job. I obviously that's unacceptable, and I think that it is just a theory that's been out there that it could be a maintenance man or someone who had access to her apartment since there was no sign of forced entry. Alternatively, I have been seeing some things about the homeless population in LA that's extremely high, and some people on the internet think that this might be the work of a houseless person. And I don't really think I agree with this. I know that her apartment complex is right, I think about 1.5 miles from Skid Row, which is just a densely populated, like, I guess, the street where all the homeless people live. But I just don't, this seems like a more personal attack. And it doesn't seem like this would be just a random homeless person who got access to her apartment and did this, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I didn't note it before, but her laptop and her phone was missing, which also leads me to believe that, yeah, you could sell these items, but I feel like it's kind of difficult to buy an offhand or a stolen iPhone nowadays. So it seems like someone who would want to get rid of those 2 items would have more reasoning to take it. Another person of interest could be her baby daddy or the guy that was going to be her child's father. Maybe she was, so we've established that she wasn't pregnant at the time of her death, but maybe she was pregnant before and she had either a miscarriage or had an abortion. And maybe she told him that and that upset him, so he retaliated. But I know that at the time we've established that she wasn't pregnant, because she was also drinking and partying and having friends over to do those drugs. And I don't think she would do that if she knowingly was pregnant. So that's just what I'm thinking. Plus, like I said before, she was on her period. So that's another reason why I believe she wasn't pregnant. And I think this theory, or like someone who knew her personally, is a bit more on the nose, just because this person had to do a lot to tie her up, put her in the fridge, move all the things around, and there was no forced entry, so that she must have known the person, or they must have been able to just know she was alone, know her new address, and was able to have access to it. So plus there was no sexual assault at all, so this kind of makes me believe that this may have been like a woman. Like, I know she had a male and a female friend. Maybe someone was jealous and this is their way of retaliating. I don't know. We don't know. But this is all just speculation. We don't have any official persons of interest as of yet. Another theory is that it could be the unidentified man that was seen using her fob in the elevator and going to her house the day after she was last seen. This person had plastic bags with them. We don't know what was in the plastic bags. Could be cleaning utensils, cleaning items for afterwards. Since the apartment was found spotless, just the brunt of it was inside of the fridge. And if you think about it, they had to have done stuff outside of the fridge before they put her in. So that is more who I'm thinking is the person, but the police, like I said, haven't named anyone. I'm sure they have footage of him, so I'm sure they've been able to identify him. And maybe they're just keeping things on the low for right now. I do want to believe that they're trying their hardest. I know historically LAPD and other police departments across the nation have not been doing the best work when it comes to Black and brown women. So I'm just gonna have to believe that they're doing their job to the best of their ability. So that's essentially most of the theories. If you have any thoughts on who you believe this might be or what might be going on, then I suggest you add that in the comments as well. I'm going to keep an eye out on this case. I know it happened back in September of last year, which is only a couple months ago, so it's still relatively new to me. So as soon as there's more information, I will make a follow-up video. I will say that if you're in the LA area, or if you know any information about this case, that you should contact the LAPD Central Bureau homicide detectives, either Detective Pierce or Marcinek, at 213-996-4150. Alternatively, anonymous tips are always welcome, and can be made either online or by calling 800-222-8477. Obviously, I know we as a collective want nothing more than to have justice for Maleesa, so any little bit of information that you know could greatly help. If you go on her sister's page, Jordan Pauline's, I don't think I mentioned this, but she's a pop star. She's a singer or a rapper. She does music. She has a GoFundMe for Maleesa, to find justice for her. So I'll also link that below. Thank you so much for listening to Maleesa's case. Please share this video. Please like and comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And yeah, it was nice seeing you.